Hi, I'm Kat Ellis. I'm the author of Wicked Little Deeds and Harrow Lake, and today we're going to be reacting to some scary urban legends. So in both Harrow Lake and Wicked Little Deeds, I included a lot of scary urban legends, so I'm keen to see what these urban legends are and if they're scarier than mine.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the corpse train. Now, according to London folklore, in the early 1900s, there was a train that ran underneath the city and it was only for dead people. Back then, London's hospitals and morgues were struggling to deal with the vast amount of people that were dying from poverty and disease. They decided to transport...
I love that this one is like so relatively modern. You know, he's talking about how much history Britain's got, and this one is only like dating back to 1900. It's quite creepy. It makes it feel quite close.
Transport the bodies out of the city, but knew that they couldn't do it overground without disturbing a lot of people. So they used an existing train line to load the bodies onto. The train ran just the other side of a wall from the normal daily service, where unsuspecting Londoners were getting on and off their trains unaware of the nearby bodies.
I wonder if there were like passing points where there were gaps that you might see this train just whizzing by. I've never actually written anything about trains in any of my books, but it's starting to give me some ideas about creepy things that I might be able to do with them.
Next up at number 9 now, we have the suicide pool. This one comes from Epping Forest near Essex. The story goes that years ago, a young couple in love were followed to a pond in the forest by the girl's father. When the couple finally embraced, the fight got out of hand and the father ended up...
Oh, it's always the father, isn't it?
...killing the boy in a rage at the edge of the pool. The waters then turned black. Wildlife that was touching the water died instantly. In the years that followed, bodies started to appear in the water. First it was an old woman, then a young one with her young child beside her. They say the pool drew them into their death, and that the pool is still out there in the forest somewhere waiting for its next victim. I
love this idea that, you know, this bad thing sort of leached out into the water. It kind of ties in with the theme that I had in Harrow Lake, with there being something in the water that was just, you know, spreading throughout the town and just infecting people with badness. You know, this sort of mysterious pool, and you don't even know where it might be, so you could even just stumble across it and the evil is still out there. It's so creepy. Let's continue.
Annie. This one comes from Edinburgh, Scotland. In the old town there lies a street known as Mary King's Close. It's steeped in myths and legends of hauntings and murders.
Oh gosh, I love anything set in Scotland. I mean, there's so many creepy stories set in Edinburgh. I just love all the ghost stories that are set there.
In 1990, a psychic called Aiko Gibo visited and felt a small hand touch hers. She said that she then made contact with the spirit of a dead child called Annie, who had died in a plague hundreds of years ago and had lost her doll. The psychic then went to a nearby shop and brought back a Barbie doll for her. Now since then, visitors leave dolls for Annie, and a mountain of them has built up in the dark.
God, all the dolls, that's so creepy. I mean, you know, I love a creepy doll, as you will know if you've read Harrow Lake, because there is the creepiest of dolls in that one. Oh gosh, the stack of them as well. Oh, love this one. The inspiration for Marianne was, you know, watching a lot of the old horror movies like Child's Play with Chucky in it and things like that. And I think there's something, I mean, a child's toy shouldn't really be that creepy, but there's just something so sinister about it when it acts in a way you're not expecting. I mean, Marianne in Harrow Lake, you obviously don't expect her to appear. And yeah, the fact that she's kind of a broken doll as well, and in this story, the child's doll's missing and this creepy little hand takes the adult's hand. Oh, yeah, there's something really sinister about kids, isn't there?
Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Faceless Woman. This one comes from the borough of Barking in London. There you can find Beacon Tree Station, home to the Faceless Woman. The most famous sighting of her happened in 1992.
I love how, you know, this is the second one of these scary stories that's based at a train station. I'm obviously missing a trick here if I'm not writing about them.
A station supervisor reported that on one night he heard the handle of his office door rattle. Outside on the platform stood a woman. She had blonde hair, she wore a very pale dress and just stared into the distance. The supervisor approached her, but as he reached out, she turned to him only to reveal she had no face.
It's always the unexpected reveal, isn't it? It's like, do you remember the movie Don't Look Now, where this couple are chasing what they think is their dead child around the streets of Venice. And then when they finally catch up to her, she turns around and it's not the child at all. It's this wizened old woman. And it's so frightening just because it's not the face you're expecting to see. So I can imagine, like, you know, this woman turns around and she's got no face at all. Kind of makes me think about Dead-Eyed Sadie in Wicked Little Deeds, and the fact that, you know, she's got no eyes, and otherwise, you know, she might look completely, you know, like your average person on the street, except, you know, turns around and there's just like gaping bloody holes for eyes. Woo.
Just darkness where there should be one. Local ghost hunters claim that she is the victim of a train crash that happened there in 1958, which killed 10 people. At number 6 now, we have The Beast. England's Hackney Marshes is known for its sprawling woodland.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I keep thinking about the Beast from The Chase. I'm assuming it's not about him.
And boggy reed marshes often covered in swirling fog, the perfect setting for this urban legend. The story goes that in 1980, 2 bear carcasses were found in the river. They had been decapitated. People started speculating about who or what could cut a bear's head clean off its shoulders.
I mean, it would make you think, wouldn't it? 2 bears with their heads cut off.
Then, a year later, 4 boys were taking a walk along the marsh one winter morning when they saw it through the trees. They described it as a giant, great, growling, hairy thing. As soon as it saw them...
Thing kind of feels like a bit of a letdown. I mean, they could, you know, great, big, grey, growling, hairy thing.
It reared up on its back legs and let out a deafening roar. The boys ran, but the story remains, always in the back of people's minds as they trudged through the marsh.
Maybe this was Bigfoot just visiting our shores, you never know. I don't know why, but I didn't find this one as creepy as the others, despite, you know, the animal decapitations being gross. I think maybe it was just the fact that it's a bit vague on the details, and maybe I just find people creepier than animals. Yeah, maybe I would have found it scarier if it was about the Beast from The Chase. And maybe also is that it just seems so unlikely to find some giant, hairy, growling creature in Britain. I mean, the biggest thing you're likely to come across nowadays is a badger or an urban fox, really, isn't it?
We're returning now to the London Underground for our number 5 with The Crying Girl. On November 18th, 1987, a match was dropped on an escalator at London's King Cross station. A fire quickly spread into the nearby ticket office, which resulted in the death of 31 people. In the years since then, passengers have reported seeing a girl who died around the station.
Ooh, another one set in a train station. But again, creepy, because I think it's, despite the fact that it's modern, I think it's, yeah, the fact that there's, you know, somebody who died in horrific circumstances. I'm always more creeped out by people.
She has long brown hair, wears jeans and a t-shirt, and is always crying. Some people have even reported hearing her sobs while smelling smoke coming out from the escalators.
Oh, you got to love an urban legend with an associated smell or a sound or something like that. It's like, it reminds me of Mr. Jitters and the legend that, you know, you hear him coming because of the chattering of his teeth. Yeah, I love the fact that you can sort of smell the smoke at the same time that you're supposed to see this one. Yeah, I think there's something that draws me to the urban legends that surround a tragedy like this one. That's kind of why I wrote about Dead-Eyed Sadie and Wicked Little Deeds, this ghost with, you know, a tragic past that, you know, something terrible happened to her and now she's tied to this one spot and has to haunt it forever. Yeah, very much like this crying girl in the train station.
Back to Scotland now for our number 4 with Sawney Bean. This is the gruesome tale of Alexander Sawney Bean, a man who was said to be the head of a Scottish clan of cannibals in medieval times.
Yay, cannibals!
According to legend, the group was made up of his wife, their 14 children and 32 grandchildren, some of whom were born through incest. They lived in a cave by the water and would ambush people on the road at night. They would bring their bodies back to the cave to then dismember and eat them. Any leftovers were pickled in a jar for later. When King James VI of Scotland eventually heard of these murders, he led a manhunt to capture them. The clan was caught and then executed. Some people say you can still find the cave along the Benane Head area of Scotland.
Ooh, cannibals living in caves, that definitely reminds me of Harrow Lake and Mr. Jitters, although he sadly did not have the family behind him to help him pursue his cannibal endeavours. Oh god, this one's grim, isn't it? And why do I write these things? So yeah, I think this one is definitely the creepiest so far. I mean, not just because there's that human element, but because there's like no supernatural aspect to it at all. There's no, mythical monster here. This is just people being evil, basically, isn't it? So I think that's probably what makes it so horrendous. And the human element is definitely something that I like to explore with the urban legends that I put into my books as well.
Moving on to number 3 now, we have Cane Hill. Some say this is one of the most haunted places in England. It was a mental asylum for over 100 years, from 1882 to 1991.
Oh, gosh, you have to love an urban legend that's set in a mental asylum or a mental hospital. I know for a fact that I have done that because there is an old mental hospital near where I live. It was shut down in the 80s, and recently, about 10 years ago, they hosted an episode of Most Haunted there. And that is really what got me sort of thinking about, ghost hunting and things like that. And that's why I've put that into Wicked Little Deeds with Dominic and Freya and their crew who go ghost hunting. So yeah, loving this one.
It built up a reputation for abandoning some of its patients, hiding them away from the public eye and never truly helping them. Some people say the patients who died left their energy behind there because of their tortured lives. The building was gutted by a mysterious fire in 2010. Perhaps the scariest stories of all are of the faces appearing by the burnt out windows.
Ooh, faces at windows, love it. There was actually an urban legend in my old primary school where you'd see, allegedly, the face of this ghost of a boy who used to be there when it was a boarding school. And he haunts the place because he fell out of that window and impaled himself on the hands of the clock that's just underneath the window. And there was quite a useful rust smear underneath it that kind of had that reddish brown tinge of old blood. So yeah, I can appreciate the ghost at the window urban legend. Yeah, I thought it was significant about this one that it was about how the people who were in that hospital were badly treated and left there to die. It's really quite sad when you think about it. But it doesn't come at it from that horrible angle of saying, the mental patients, went on a killing spree. It's looking at the history of the place and how, people there actually did suffer. So yeah, I think this one's quite grim.
Next up at number 2 now, we have the House of the Screaming Skull. This one comes from Bettiscombe Manor in Dorset, England. The legend goes that in 1830, a man lived there called John Frederick Pinney. He had a slave that he had brought back from the Caribbean island of Nevis. The man became ill, and on his deathbed, he swore he would never rest unless his body was returned home to Nevis. Pinney refused to pay for that expense, and when he died, he had the man buried in the local graveyard. After that,
this is horrible and sad.
Ill fortune began to plague the village for months. Screams and cries were heard from the cemetery. At the manor house, windows rattled and doors kept slamming. The body was dug up and brought to the manor house, where today only the skull remains, where it's said to haunt the manor, but the village remains safe.
Couldn't they have sent the skull back to Nevis? Oh, this was horrible. And I don't blame him for rattling those windows. I'd have done more. Yeah, again, that was another one that was, I think, more sad than scary. The idea of this person who was, on his deathbed just wanted to have his body sent home. And even now, the skull is still there. Well, that's horrible. Just send it back. Gosh, people are awful.
And finally at number 1 now, we have the Hellhounds. Dartmoor is a vast, rocky, windy and mysterious part of England. It's popular among tourists, but everyone who goes there is aware of the legend of the Hellhounds. It's said that a pack of these ghost dogs wanders the moors at night, preying on sheep, and they're not afraid of humans.
Ooh, this makes me think of the Hound of the Baskervilles. I wonder if this was a legend that Arthur Conan Doyle had heard before writing that.
They've often been described as cat-like, but with the frame of a bear, and very fast. There have been pictures and film taken of them over the years that claim to show glimpses of these hellhounds in action.
These British werewolves? Are they here?
Many of the locals don't even need that though. They've heard the stories handed down from generation to generation. Some of them even say
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those are wolfhounds, aren't they? I mean, I don't know much about dogs, but I don't think they're werewolves.
Seen the hounds with their own 2 eyes.
I love that one because it just reminds me of Hound of the Baskervilles. But I still think that the creepiest one of all was the one about the cannibals in the caves, purely because it was about humans doing terrible things, and that is just, the kind of things that I write about in my urban legends, or that inspire the urban legends that I put into Wicked Little Deeds and Harrow Lake as well. We have cannibals and things like that in Harrow Lake, and in Wicked Little Deeds we have, you know, this ghost of dead-eyed Sadie who's been terribly wronged and is now a vengeful ghost. So yeah, I think a lot of these urban legends are making me think about the ones that I write and ones that I might write in future. Hope you enjoyed this video about British urban legends. If you love urban legends as much as I do, then I think you might like my new book, which is coming out soon. It's called Wicked Little Deeds, and it's about a girl called Ava who's grown up in the town of Burden Falls, which is a town dripping in superstition and urban legends, including one about a ghost who haunts the waterfall, a young woman called Dead-Eyed Sadie who has had her eyes taken out and is now looking for revenge. And Ava doesn't really believe in the legends until bodies start piling up around Burden Falls, and all eyes are on Ava, including those of the police who think that she might have had something to do with it, but she has to start questioning whether Dead-Eyed Sadie might actually be real after all. Thanks everyone for watching. If you know about any scary urban legends, let us know about them in the comments, and for more content like this, make sure you subscribe to Platform.
That's creepy as hell.